I look at Russia. Can we give a round of applause for Russia? Yes. Absolutely, absolutely.
The happy cheers for Russia and Putin at a far-right political conference. That was just this weekend. I quoted former Obama aide Sheikho Minduri. He is my guest tonight. Good to see you, sir.
Good to see you, Ari.
We quoted you in looking at the roots of this because it goes way beyond Trump. And it has to be in a time of all of these problems and some unpredictable developments, I would say, in America in the last 5 years. Particularly strange to see the party of Joe McCarthy at the extreme edge of the Red Scare, or Ronald Reagan at more of the muscular foreign policy plank, go to cheering Putin as he invades Ukraine. Your breakdown.
Yeah, I think it's very important to note that the GOP admiration for Putin actually predates Donald Trump. He did not necessarily initiate it or lead it when it really began. And the reason it began is because in many ways, Vladimir Putin's Russia really exemplifies a lot of the ideas that Republicans talk about. Russia is the ideal red state. And I mean red as in Republican, not necessarily red as in communist. Russia is a fossil fuel economy. It is a country where the religious right has a tremendous power in making social policy, which you discussed when it came to LGBTQ issues. It is a country that is a militaristic military powerhouse, perhaps maybe not as much as we thought so before this invasion, but they are a country that actually spends more of their GDP on the military than the United States does. It is a ethno-state that prioritizes the identity of white Russians. It is a country where democracy has been successfully rolled back and an alpha male leader is now in place. In all of these areas, we are seeing Republicans articulate a lot of these ideas. Vladimir Putin has put them in practice, which is why so many of them have admired him all these years.
And we look at the strong nature of the right-wing media machine. I don't know what that would have done in the Reagan era. In many ways, he was, of course, a very effective communicator, the first Hollywood president, et cetera. But whatever you want to say about Reagan's policies, he had some. And he had a view of trying to box in through arms control and arms escalation. So, you know, both mechanisms, right, hard power as well as soft, which we were discussing earlier in the hour, ways to deal with Gorbachev and the Soviet Union. We don't see any of that here in the discussion about Russia and Putin. As I put it, it's all at a GQ reality TV level. And I mentioned that in showing a little bit of Tucker Carlson, who I just want to say before I show this clip, we know from Tucker Carlson's writing that he is not this dumb. We know that he is pitching a level of foreign policy analysis that is far beneath his ability. Call this the soft bigotry of expectations of Tucker Carlson from 10 years ago, if you will. But he knows what he's doing when he does this. Take a look.
Democrats in Washington have told you have a patriotic duty to hate Vladimir Putin. It's not a suggestion, it's a mandate. It might be worth asking yourself, since it is getting pretty serious, what is this really about? Why do I hate Putin so much? Has Putin ever called me a racist?
Jay?
Well, what's really interesting is I remember when conservatives criticized Muhammad Ali when he took the Olympic torch in 1996 at the Olympics, and they criticized him for his opposition to the Vietnam War, if you remember, because he said, you know, no Viet Cong ever used a racial slur against him. It's interesting that that is the exact logic that Tucker Carlson is now using to really justify this invasion. And we have to remember Muhammad Ali never, in no way, really supported, you know, the North Korean.
That's wild. I hadn't thought, I don't know if I've heard anyone else draw that connection, Muhammad Ali's memorable phrase, but yes, that it's sort of being flipped in a weird right-wing perversion, which is fascinating when you say that. What do you think of the breakdown of Tucker trying to convince people that there is no substantive reason to have adversaries abroad? I mean, as if you would just accept all foreign leaders and not have any U.S.-based interests. How does that truck with American exceptionalism or America First or any of that?
Well, it's completely morally bankrupt, and it's completely the opposite of what Republicans and conservatives have talked about, really going back to the Cold War era. I mean, Tucker Carlson said just because it doesn't affect him, therefore America should have no role. It should stay out. But I think it's actually even more insidious if you think about like the history with Tucker and Viktor Orban and the Republicans in general, and how much they have admired Putin over the years. You know, one of the big aspects was that Vladimir Putin's Russia is very much the opposite of Barack Obama's America. Barack Obama was somebody who believed in diversity, democracy, a knowledge-based economy. You know, he very much was comfortable being a gentleman leader, not a Putinish thug. The Republicans didn't like that model, and they went and found a Putin of their own in Donald Trump. And that's exactly that's someone who they still admire, and that's exactly where they went. And that's where Tucker still wants to go. That's why he talks up Vladimir Putin, Viktor Orban, and these other dictators now.
Yeah, you make a very subtle point about the sort of elevation of that version of their politics abroad. Have you seen The Great on Hulu yet?
No, I have not. You're talking about Catherine the Great, that miniseries about Catherine the Great?
They have a character it's a satirical view, and it's all of old Russia of a different era, but they have a religious character from the sort of the imagined Russian Orthodox Church who's very against any reforms, science, art, the future. And at one point he's scripted saying, why does everyone always talk about the future like it's an improvement? It may be a decline, which is a traditional, sometimes conservative view. Buckley and others talk that way. And you seem to be arguing that in part this sort of right-wing obsession or fascination with these certain places, as you call them, ethno-nationalist, and also kind of throwbacks to, again, someone who Donald Trump ran on Reagan's slogan. The plagiarized slogan of Reagan was "Make America Great Again," which is a throwback, the idea that for some people, the 50s in the right-wing fantasy were better than today, Jay.
Yeah, and that is always a hallmark of conservative thinking. It's always the idea that the past was somehow better and that we need to reach back to the past and find models for the future, if you will. And that's, it's interesting that last night, one of the responses the Republicans made to Biden's State of the Union was basically saying, drill, baby, drill. I mean, that's more or less what Governor Reynolds was saying when she said we need more oil and more gas production. Fossil fuel economies of the kind that Russia has actually lend themselves to social conservatism. We see that with the Middle East. We see that with Red America here. That is actually a thing that we should really keep in mind when we talk about climate change and fossil fuel economies. It's not just about air pollution and climate change. I would also argue it has some level of protecting democracy and creating a better future for people, which is why I think Republicans are so staunchly talking about coal mining jobs, fossil fuel economies. Vladimir Putin, very much Russia, John McCain said, is a gas station masquerading as a country.
From Muhammad Ali to the great, to the late John McCain, we've been around the bend. But plenty to think about, and that last point is really interesting about the petropolitics and what is the cost of that, because the human cost could not be higher right now in that troubled region. Jay Komanduri, good to see you as always, sir.